And that's one of the things I explain to men is you may think you feel fine because in the young male population today, they may have never had adequate testosterone.
There's a lot of guys who think that's so. Okay, so all I need to do to be a man is to inject testosterone, get on hormone replacement therapy or whatever it is.
There are a lot of men's health clinics out there. They do a terrible job. They don't know what they're doing. They have a cookbook approach. They have a one-size-fits-all regimen approach. They don't give enough testosterone.
They were going to prescribe me up to 50 micrograms a day, and you said, no, don't do that. Stick you to 25 micrograms a day, and I can tell all those problems, like you said that you would, like when was that interview about a month ago, have gone away. Hello, everyone. This is another video by Magic Male for your pleasure. And today we're honored and blessed by having Dr. Ty Vincent here with us, who is a medical doctor. And he's also a specialist in TRT, short for testosterone replacement therapy. And in this day and age, we have a lot of problems with masculinity. And a lot of that is internal mindset, which we'll all get to. But there's another component which I, at my somewhat advanced age of 67, have run into increasingly the last few years, despite working out, despite taking care of myself, despite eating all the right things, taking all the right supplements. I found I was running on fumes. I was running on empty. And the workouts not only didn't seem to help that very much, even though they help with other things, but they actually seem to drain my gas tank even further without giving me the oomph, be it in business, be it the business acumen and prowess, be it in the bedroom. Things were working. They were working okay, but okay isn't good enough. And we live in an age, we're a day and age where we have problems with nutrition. We don't have the nutritional value in whatever we eat, particularly in vegetables, fruit, and so forth, grains. We just don't have what it was 50 to 100 years ago. The world is full of microplastics. The world is full of pesticides, all kinds of wonderful things like atrazine. It's turning the effing frogs gay. Alex Jones famously said, whatever it is, men seem to be more effeminate. They don't seem to have the get up and go. They don't seem to have the drive for life to stand for something greater than themselves. And here we are. And it's not a man's world anymore. It's more of a neutral world, a neutrum world. I don't know what it is. Anyway, for that to fix and to address, we have you here, Dr. Ty Vincent. I found you a few months ago on YouTube, and I listened to what you had to say. You convinced me by your presence, by your personality, and by the way you express things. Very simple, no frills, no nonsense. And so thank you very much for coming here, and we're glad to have you. And I'm hoping that you can enlighten some of us, the many men that come to us for masculinity advice, with a little bit of the biology, medical, biochemical background. And one word sums up masculinity in this day and age, often a derogatory term, and that's testosterone. Let's talk about testosterone.
Right. Well, to introduce myself briefly, I am a medical doctor. I'm an MD. I was born and raised in Alaska, fairly small town in Alaska. And then I went to medical school eventually at the University of Washington in Seattle. I went to residency in family medicine in Anchorage, Alaska, back in my home. I learned how to deliver babies, do colonoscopies. I managed my own hospital patients, even in the ICU, did surgeries, pretty much everything in medicine. And when I went out into practice, my goal was to figure out how to help people with complicated chronic illness problems, because that's the part that traditional modern medicine rather sucks at. They just don't understand why people are sick in the modern world. And as I began to learn more and more things outside of conventional medicine, I learned Chinese medicine, I learned acupuncture, I learned homeopathy, I learned hormone therapy was one of the big things I found to be extremely helpful for a lot of people for a lot of different problems. And then I learned all kinds of immunotherapy techniques for people with chronic immunological problems and inflammatory problems. That's another big aspect of what I do in practice today. But working with hormones, starting around 2007, I discovered that a huge number of people are deficient in various different hormones nowadays. And as you mentioned, at your age, in your late 60s, that's when our culture kind of expects men to start suffering from testosterone deficiency. It's always been thought of as an aging population problem. As I sought other areas of medicine and knowledge, one of the organizations that I connected with is called the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. And their whole mission is to identify environmental toxins, chemicals primarily, but also other toxic things in the world like mold and things like that. But a lot of discussion of chemicals and chemical toxicants and what they do to the human body. And as I learned from that organization, and I also continued to do hormone replacement therapy and whatnot, and then I began to lecture about testosterone deficiency and other problems. Through researching the subject very extensively, I found a lot of research showing that certain individual chemicals that are common in our world today directly cause a suppression of testosterone production. And not just that, but they also suppress progesterone production in women, which is part of the infertility problem they run into. It's part of PCOS and PMS and all these other problems that women run into. It's part of infertility for both genders. But the testosterone deficiency piece really fascinated me. I myself discovered I was very low in my mid-30s, and I went on TRT at age 35. I was shockingly deficient, even though I felt pretty good, I thought. And that's one of the things I explain to men is you may think you feel fine because either in the young male population today, they may have never had adequate testosterone. And so they have no idea what they're missing. Or in a middle-aged or aging man, it happens so gradually that every day is just incrementally worse and you just don't really notice because it's slow until one day it's gotten bad enough that you look back in time and go, what the hell happened to me? You know, where did the spark of my life go? But you look at the problem and you look at individual chemicals, like you mentioned, things like microplastics and pesticides and things. One of the big ones is glyphosate, which is the main chemical in Roundup, the weed killer. And it was such a popular product that for the last 20, 25 years, it's been just saturating all of our major crops. It made its way into the groundwater, the rainwater. You can find it everywhere in the world now. You can find it in every human being in the world now. And it only takes small amounts of this stuff to suppress testosterone production. And so the evidence is there to me why this is happening. And what the population doesn't really understand so much that I preach about extensively now is that testosterone deficiency is now predominantly a young man's problem. It is not as much an old man's problem. I have had the opportunity to test a number of men in their 70s and into their 80s who still have total testosterone levels in the 800s or 900s. Which is like American units, so that's picograms per deciliter. But the reference range they have posted now, which I want to talk about in a minute, doesn't even go that high. They keep lowering the reference ranges on the lab reports because of this very clear drift downward in testosterone levels for the whole population, to where now they've lowered the reference range so far that the upper limit is around 750 on most labs. And like I said, I see guys in their 80s that run levels in the 800s. So by that reference range, those older men are considered testosterone excess, which makes no sense whatsoever. And this is part of the education problem for doctors. They just don't know what normal or optimal testosterone levels are. All they know is the numbers on the laboratory report, which are bullshit. They just keep lowering them as men become more deficient as a population. You keep moving the goalposts closer together until you basically can touch them both. And now everyone's deficient pretty much under age 30, like very significantly symptomatically deficient. The people that I test, almost everybody under age 30. And it's such a problem that everybody just thinks it's normal because it's so common. And here we are today. And when I talk to doctors, I try to teach lectures to doctors about TRT and say, you need to be getting men's testosterone levels up above 2000, which is, again, the American unit. So like in Europe and in Canada and Australia, they use nanomoles per liter. And I think that equates to a level of around 70, if I remember right. But I'd have to double check that. So it's a huge problem. And I'm happy to talk about it here today with you, Orlando, and anybody else who's willing to listen, frankly.
I think people need to listen to this, and it's been a subject of contention, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And testosterone itself has, of course, gotten a bad name. How many movies have you seen? We said, well, that's a little too much testosterone for me. Usually issued by a guy chick, but who thinks it's a problem. And women actually do need a little bit of testosterone too. And I've seen what happens when women take it. Their body weight usually goes down. Their muscles do not longer atrophy. They actually get into better shape, and they actually seem more focused themselves. But it's that get up and go thing. And working with men, only men for 20 years, I've seen this very disturbing lack of drive, lack of standing for something, vision, mission, purpose. Well, those are more philosophical issues, of course, or emotional, psychological issues. But I've seen just what people call the political will. Somebody wrote to us a couple of years ago, and we still use it almost like as a running joke. Well, Orlando, I didn't know that, I didn't have the topic of masculinity on my radar, and I didn't know that it could be important. And I said, well, without masculinity, you really aren't anything. You're basically an invertebrate jellyfish without a spine. And aside from things probably not going well in the bedroom, and in Europe, people don't go to the gym, at least not in Germany. In America, you see doctors, lawyers, stockbrokers in the gym just as much as a truck driver and the guy next door. But in Europe, that's not so. You only see kind of like hardcore people, the fighters, people that, construction workers, that it's almost like a social stigma. And we did these workshops in Sedona until a few years ago. And on the final day, we'd always do a relatively authentic sweat lodge with a Native American, a friend of mine, an Apache Indian. And I saw these German guys. They were almost all German guys. And when the American guys, they're always kind of like, yeah, you can see that play some baseball, basketball, football. They have some muscles. They've been in the gym with their dad, whatever. These guys were all super skinny, literally not a hair, and they're just white and just, devoid of any muscle. And I said, you guys really, I don't know about your country, but in my country, the US of A, we kind of go to the gym. And, but a few years ago, I can tell I was starting to run out of the motivation to go to the gym. I tried to work a little harder. I tried to force myself to the gym, and I realized that it's wonderful, but if I'm in the gym for 2 hours, I'm coming home and I'm completely pooped. And I'm usually not recovering for a day or two. So I can only go 2 or 3 times a week at best. And I was just running out of steam. I felt old. I probably looked old. I felt a lot older 10 years ago than I'm feeling now. At age 57, I felt a lot older. I felt women weren't responding to me anymore. I must be losing my mojo, my touch, and everything. And my sex drive went down. My ability to have good, long, hard sex kind of seemed to maybe not go away, but ever so slightly decline. I said, well, I refuse to live like that. So I sought the help of some people there in Los Angeles, and they eventually put me on TRT a few years ago. And my life's been infinitely better for it. And that was by this kind of dosage. My levels were down in the 300s. And then they came up to 1,000. And then, of course, my local doctor, well, that's kind of way high. You really should reduce that. Plus, you're increasing your risk of prostate cancer. This is why you should take Proscar and all this stuff. And I'm like, if that's true, that high testosterone or too high testosterone, whatever that means, is causing prostate cancer, or at least precipitating it, then wouldn't all the young men who, in theory, probably of our generation or the one before us, probably had levels in the 500 to 1,000, whatever, then they would have all have prostate cancer, and the risk would actually decline as you lose testosterone.
Right. So it's obviously that's not the case. Now, it goes up with age as testosterone levels fall. There's no correlation. It's been studied. Large-scale studies have been done to look at the question of whether or not testosterone replacement increases the risk of prostate cancer, and it absolutely does not. There is no evidence that it does. It has been put to rest. Any doctor who says that is just it's just hearsay. It's what they've heard from colleagues, and they never bothered to do a shred of their own research. And in fact, all of the fears and concerns the public has about testosterone are unfounded. I can tell you definitively, I've treated about 1,000 men for 20 years with TRT now, and there are no risks of high testosterone itself. There's just none. The risks you incur all have to deal with whether or not your body makes an excessive amount of estrogen out of it, or DHT, dihydrotestosterone. So the enlargement of your prostate gland, not cancer, but the enlargement of your prostate gland is caused by estrogen or by dihydrotestosterone. Testosterone itself does not affect growth of the prostate at all. It simply doesn't. Because I've had my testosterone level in the 3,000s for like 16 years. It doesn't cause enlargement of the prostate. But if you allow excessive estrogen conversion to persist, because most doctors don't check it and don't manage it accordingly, and the guys in the gym who are getting their own testosterone off the internet or from their buddies with the bro science in the gyms, they don't do any labs either. They're not being managed medically. They're not supervised. And those are the ones that start incurring these unnecessary negative consequences that are totally avoidable. If the doctors were trained and educated properly, and if everybody had proper supervision, it would not be an issue. But it's not the testosterone itself. It's what the testosterone may or may not turn into when it goes into your body. That's very individualized. It's not the same for everybody. And that's where a doctor comes in, or just, somebody with the knowledge. You can go get your own lab tests done. You can get your own medications and everything off the internet if you want to. You can do all of this without a doctor if you have gotten the education and the information somewhere that's actually accurate.
No, and that seems, and of course, one of the other arguments is, and testosterone, just like the male masculinity has been, toxic masculinity, it has been maligned very much. Does it cause, people said, well, you're kind of an aggressive kind of guy. I said, yeah, you should have seen me in my younger years. I've mellowed out by about 90%. If you think I'm an asshole now or aggressive now, you clearly didn't know me in my 30s. And I have no idea what my testosterone levels were then. But it causes road rage. It causes roid rage. It makes you want to shoot people on the street, right? And that's another one of these absolutely without evidence kind of BS things.
The other problem with that is the use of the term steroids. So the culture, the public, when you say testosterone, they just think steroids, and steroids are bad. And I have to explain to people all the time that a steroid is a molecule made from cholesterol originally. And the term steroid includes estrogen, it includes progesterone, DHEA, cortisol, pregnenolone, testosterone, yes, but all of these other myriad of steroid hormones that your body produces. Every woman on a birth control pill is taking steroids, okay? So the negative effects of steroids that do cause anger and aggression, none of that is caused by bioidentical biological testosterone that men produce internally and that you can acquire from the pharmacy or purchase to use for yourself for TRT. If it says the word testosterone, it's biologically identical to your testosterone molecule. You can measure it on the blood test when you are monitoring your usage, and everything's fine. And that absolutely does not cause aggression. It does not cause violent tendencies, any of that. If anything, it is the absolute opposite. Men who have low testosterone feel bad inside. They feel unconfident. They feel fearful, anxious, and they are extremely irritable. They are negative, pessimistic, nihilistic. They're unmotivated. Everything's bad. They respond to everything in a negative way. And those are the guys, and it's most of our society today, that have negative responses to things emotionally. Men who have adequate and optimal testosterone levels feel so good and confident inside that they don't get upset. They will act when necessary. Like you said, the positive aspect of masculinity. They will defend the people who need to be defended. They will end fights, but not start them. That's what you get with adequate testosterone. But it's the guys that are low that are just pissed off all the time and are going to, have road rage and whatnot. The steroids people are familiar with that cause the anger and the aggression are the ones that are not meant for human beings, that the bodybuilders use and the athletes use, and they're abused, frankly, because they're using massive amounts to try to achieve some kind of physical performance that isn't within human range naturally, right? So they're using things like equipoise and trenbolone and Winstrol, and these are things that are either designed for horses or livestock, right? Like trenbolone, I think, is for bulls, and equipoise is for horses, but they're not human molecules. We didn't evolve with these molecules in our brain or our body. So they may have a profound anabolic effect, but the effects on your brain and your psychology are very unpredictable. And many, many men will report having really difficult times with their emotional management when they use those anabolic steroids. But the problem is our culture nowadays doesn't do details. They don't do real education. They don't really learn. They hear something and they repeat it without knowing what the hell they're talking about. And the internet makes that light speed. Like, bad information travels so fast and it becomes the truth for everybody when it's totally wrong, right? And so I'm always trying to explain to people that steroids, when they're talking about those negative effects, are the ones that are not human-made steroids. They're not the ones that belong in your body. And I highly discourage men from using those because of that. You don't know the health consequences. Some of them cause liver toxicity. Some of them cause other weird effects you don't want. And they've definitely caused psychological effects for most men that use them, some level of unpleasant psychological effects. So that's what you want to avoid.
No, I can agree with that. And I've known quite a few bodybuilders or gym bros in my life, but I've also known a lot of special operations guys, people that do kind of what I do in a roundabout way. They teach men about masculinity, and a couple of examples come to mind. One of these guys is one of my acquaintances was at first a bouncer at a strip club in San Diego. He was also teaching men, and he kind of started he went through that whole route that you just said, and then kind of came back to the normal thing. He went to he's only 5'11" or something like that, but he was 320 pounds, and there was not a gram of fat on this guy. But I tell you this, being a bouncer, which is more of a defensive thing, they don't usually start fights. He was ending fights. And when two guys go out there, one is either a little bitch with low T, or basically PMSing, quote unquote, or the other guy is, or he's just got a heart on for the world. They go out there and they want to win. It's about ego. It's about narcissistic, self-gratification. They want to win that fight. And then when you see all these special operations guys, or this guy in San Diego, or who's now the owner of a strip club and so forth, these guys are like, you don't want to really fight me. Trust me, bro. You don't want to fight me. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk away. You're going to walk away. And we're going to end this. And if they actually do get in the fight, they're not there to win it. They're to end it. And as quickly and as hopefully non-lethal as possible. But those are not the guys I've seen do stupid things or pick fights. Yes, I've seen some Marines pick fights in bars and stuff, but I have not really seen special operations forces, or actually special ops guys, which is Green Berets, try to do that. Those guys don't have a bone to pick. They don't have a chip on their shoulder. They don't have any points to prove. Whereas it's the low T guys that always want to fight you, the Antifa types. And again, this is not about left or right or politics or any of that crap. It's about, they seem to have a chip on their shoulder, and they're almost acting like men on PMS. They're acting bitchy, for lack of a better word. And I've seen a lot. And this calm, cool demeanor that wants to end things, that wants to stabilize. They're dominant, not domineering. They don't want to down talk to people. They seem to be a stabilizing force.
So I've had a lot of men start on lower doses and want to when I first started prescribing testosterone, I didn't know where optimal was. And I started kind of in the dosing range that the drug books, prescribing books recommend and whatnot. But pretty quickly I realized that was not nearly enough, because men would, I was doing once a week injections, and they'd come in and go, I feel really good for, 5 or 6 days, but then I kind of fall off the cliff, and then it takes a day to get back up. When I used it myself, I could definitely feel that. And so I started having guys do injections closer together. Maybe like 5 days is about as far apart as you want to get them, because it just doesn't last that long. Your levels will drop below your threshold where you become symptomatic again. And over the years, I just kind of started giving larger and larger amounts. And I would just tell them, let's just give, incrementally go up every couple of weeks until you think you have found the optimal dose point, because another notch up doesn't seem to make a difference, right? I mean, you just go up gradually. Oh, that feels better. Go another increment up. That feels better too. And then you get to a point where you go up another notch or two and you're like, it's all the same. So just stay there. And consistently, man after man after man after man, including myself, my friends, family that I've helped manage, if we get our levels up consistently in the 2000s or higher, everybody's happy. That's where we feel and function optimally and our best. And you maintain estrogen levels and DHT levels within the proper range for men. And there are no consequences, no side effects. It's just, this is the best version of yourself. This is the best your life is going to be with this one factor, right? There's, like you talked about, all kinds of other factors about you and your life and quality of life, your exercise habits, your diet, your supplements, if you need them, your sleep, whatever else you do. But as far as testosterone goes, there's an easy threshold. It's in the 2000s or above. You got to stay above that at all times, which means you might have to peak at 3000 or something and kind of stay up there. But honestly, 4000 and 3000 and 2500 all feel the same. It just doesn't really matter. Pretty much you just get your airplane has to get above the clouds, and it's all blue sky. And they're like, fine, you just don't want to go back in the clouds. And you can tell, like, any man who has been on TRT and had really good effects, optimal, and then you go on vacation or your prescription doesn't get refilled and you end up going an extra week without it, you absolutely see the difference. It happens right away. Instead of that gradual decline over years you may have experienced leading to that point, it just gets pulled out from under you one week and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know how I functioned like this for the years that I did. It's a huge contrast. And it's It's been very consistent. Man after man, I just give them the authority, the agency to play with their dose, and you let me know where you feel best. And this is where every guy reports back, this is the spot. And so it's not me making it up. There's no published research to support this because there's no money in researching testosterone, frankly. There's very little published research on the use of testosterone. There's very little. I give lectures on this every year or two, and I look for new research, and there's very little because there's no money in a bioidentical hormone. They can't patent it. They can't sell it at a huge markup. It's cheap stuff. And so they want to talk about, erectile dysfunction pills and sleeping pills and Adderall. Most guys that I see that are on that have low testosterone, they come in and they're on at least 3 or 4 prescription drugs to deal with the symptoms that they have, like Adderall or modafinil to have energy and mental alertness because they're tired all the damn time. A lot of them need a sleeping pill to go to sleep at night because even though they're exhausted, they still can't shut their brain off and go to sleep at night because the worry and the anxiety that they experience. A lot of them are on antidepressants or anxiety pills. Most of them are on an erectile dysfunction pill like Viagra or Cialis or something like that. And most of them are on a high cholesterol drug because their cholesterol levels go up, their metabolism sucks. A lot of them end up with type 2 diabetes. We get men all the time, and I put them on the right regimen of testosterone, and their blood sugar is normalized. They lose 30 or 40 pounds of fat. They go from diabetic to non-diabetic in 6 months or less. Blood pressure becomes normal. Cholesterol becomes normal. They get off all these drugs. This one molecule that is the driving force behind health for men is indispensable. It's something you have to have in adequate amounts to have the life you're supposed to have. It's just period. Like you said, you can do everything right. You can be the best little boy in school. You can eat right, exercise right, do everything you're supposed to do, and your life is going to suck if you don't have enough testosterone. It's just going to.
Boy, can I vouch for that. If you don't know what Dr. Vincent looks like, this man is huge. He looks like Joe Rogan. He's massive. I mean, he looks like a bodybuilder, even though I think that's what you do. You're not even a gym bro, but you're bigger than most of them. And I'm sure there is some kind of correlation in a positive way here. So if you want to look like this guy looks like a man's man, you can't see it in this video, but go on YouTube, find some of his other videos, and you see what he actually looks like. And I think that's kind of the results speak for themselves.
6'2" and about 240 pounds at 10% body fat.
Yeah, you look like a freaking linebacker, but more toned. Yeah, I mean, I can only actually vouch for that, and also, underwrite that. So guys, don't just wing it or just trust your bro pseudoscience in the gym. Ask, get your labs done. Otherwise, you're flying blind. And also, one other thing that people might want to understand here, you're not in a conflict of interest because you're not selling TRT. You're not selling it. All I did with you was a one-time half-hour consultation. That was it. And then you said, okay, this is where you get it and so forth. I'm not benefiting, I'm not profiting from that. So there's no conflict of interest here. I just want to make that very, very clear. Neither you nor I are making a dime of any kind of, I don't care how much you take, what are you doing? That's all on you. Do your research, if you need to get a second opinion, get that. But I mean, I have not been steered wrong by you, and yet there's no conflict of interest. I just want to make sure that's really understood by everyone.
There are a lot of men's health clinics out there. I talk to guys all the time that have been working with these places. They're all over the US now, and I'm sure they're in other countries too, that are purporting to help you get your hormones right and all that. I haven't seen a man yet going to any one of these places that is on a good regimen. They do a terrible job. They don't know what they're doing. They have a cookbook approach. They have a one-size-fits-all regimen approach. They don't give enough testosterone. They don't manage metabolites correctly. I got an email from one poor guy that was just turned inside out by one of these kind of clinics. They're supposed to be hormone experts. They didn't ever put him on an estrogen blocker. His estrogen was up in the 300s. He had to have surgery to remove his gynecomastia, his breast tissue that grew. He felt terrible. And he kept telling them, hey, my estrogen seems high. Shouldn't you give me something? And they told him, what did they tell him? They gave him like DIM, diindolylmethane, the supplement that's supposed to lower it. That doesn't work very well at all, by the way. That is not going to cut it for hardly anybody. And the guy's just become a mess because of being mismanaged in this way. So like, I'm not here to tell people everyone should just use testosterone. It's the best thing ever. It's like, it is a medical intervention, and it has to be managed correctly for each individual for their personal needs. And it takes a certain amount of skill and knowledge. And I'm really disheartened by the lack of education and the lack of knowing that's out there in this field, even by the clinics and centers that claim to be the experts in this area. They just don't know what they're doing either. And it's because the education just isn't there. Most hormone training that doctors have available, if like a doctor's want to look up, bioidentical hormone training, where can I go? The vast majority of the seminars and the workshops that are put on by compounding pharmacies. Compounding pharmacies, I think they're lying, or they might just be ignorant, and they tell people that injectable testosterone is not bioidentical. And they tell everybody they got to use a cream because they make money selling compounded creams. Like the compounding pharmacies put these things on, and all the doctors talk about is getting compounded creams and this and that, and maybe pellets and these products. Those are not ideal. They don't work very well. I mean, and the stuff that does work very well is bioidentical, and it's available at every pharmacy. There's just bad training. They look at laboratory data and they don't look at all the right laboratory data. And then they just treat everybody based on numbers, and they don't treat people based on their symptoms and their unique circumstances. I do my own bioidentical hormone therapy workshops for doctors, but I'm not broadly known. I do it like once a year. I've taught workshops for BHRT over the years off and on, and I might have like 50 people attend. It's not large scale. Like the A4M, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, I think it is, they do big hormone therapy workshops and stuff. Their training does not equip people to do a good job. It just doesn't. It's very unfortunate that the education out there is relatively poor. And I'm going to try to have a larger presence, at least online, forums like this where people can actually have questions answered, and things will be recorded and the information will be there, that I have seen yield good results. And again, like you mentioned, there's a lot of legitimacy in someone who's not selling you stuff. you get a lot on the internet, you hear somebody start talking, and very quickly you're like, oh, they got car salesman vibes coming out of them. And they're trying to sell you on their herbal product that'll boost your testosterone or whatever. You see all those things on the internet. They're like, don't use TRT, just use our herbs and things that'll raise your testosterone by 200 points. Like, great, you're going to go from 300 to 500. You're still going to feel like crap all the time. It's just a waste of time and money. You can use testosterone replacement optimal for $100 a month. With between the testosterone, if you need anastrozole, the syringes, the needles, it's like $100 a month or less. If you find a good source that's inexpensive for the testosterone, you take these supplements and things they want to sell, you're going to spend a lot more money than that, and you're going to get like a tiny amount of increase. I can only think that these other practitioners don't ask their patients any questions, or if they do, they just don't listen to the answers, because it's really obvious. Like, if you listen to your patients, they tell you what's going on and you learn. If you listen to everybody's stories, you ask the questions, you will learn, and then you will adjust your methods and you will find better results. And eventually, it doesn't take very long. I mean, I was probably managing testosterone for guys for just a couple of years before I had this all dialed in. Like, oh, okay, this is where everybody does great. Cool. These are the parameters you want to follow. These are the options that you have, and everybody's different. And it's really not that freaking complicated, to tell you the truth. As long as somebody shows you what's important and you know the parameters and you treat everybody as an individual. And like you mentioned, I usually talk to men maybe 2-3 times. I don't have to talk to most guys more than that. And then we know exactly where they're supposed to be. And if they can acquire their own testosterone, their own anastrozole, their own finasteride, if their DHT is high, they don't need me anymore. And that's what I prefer. I'm not in this. I don't want to have just 1,000 guys that I manage TRT for forever. I would rather see new people every week, every month, and get them straightened out and send them out in the world to be successful, positive, productive men who don't need my help anymore.
So you're not a prescription model like what modern allopathic medicine in many cases seems to be. They just get you in and they really just kind of dangle that perfect health in front of you forever and ever, but you need to keep coming and you need to paying into that subscription like an insurance company. And it's that is a conflict of interest. In your case, it's clearly not. And I'll be talking to you again about this in the not too distant future. There's a couple of questions that have come up here. One of those, obviously, everybody asks, is there any long-term damage? What's the long cost? Remember the movie Limitless? There was a downside to it. Yes, it gives you instant genius level, but
your brain fries apart, eventually. No, so testosterone is an anabolic steroid. Okay. To contrast that with catabolic steroids like prednisone. People are familiar with corticosteroids, cortisone, prednisone, the things we use to treat inflammatory disorders like asthma and arthritis and things like that, right? Catabolic steroids like cortisol and prednisone, they destroy your body. They make your bones fall apart. They cause ulcers. They waste your muscles. They put on fat. They cause high blood pressure. They cause type 2 diabetes. Lots of bad crap with those types of steroids. Testosterone is an anabolic steroid, which means it promotes the growth and maintenance of healthy, good tissue, bone, muscle, tendon, skin. Many epidemiologic studies have been done looking at aging and older people and have shown very clearly in different cultures of the world and whatever that the higher a person's testosterone levels remain into older age, the longer they live, the more functional they are, the better their health and quality of life are. It's clearly correlated with better longevity, better health, better quality of life, better performance. We know that. The question would be, well, if you're taking it as like an exogenous, supplement, is that also true? And that hasn't necessarily been looked at long-term into older age. The biggest question people have had has been regarding cardiovascular disease, heart attacks and things like that. There's only been one reasonable study looking at that question that I have found. I've looked repeatedly. And so there was one study where they had about 300 men in each of two groups, and they all had low testosterone. And these were guys like in their 40s, kind of middle-aged, not older men. So they didn't have like a lot of illness problems and deteriorated already. One group used TRT, one group did not use testosterone, and they watched them for, I think, 7 years. So over the course of the 7-year study, the group of 290 or 300 men that did not use testosterone, there were 19 deaths from cardiovascular events, heart attacks, and strokes. In the group that used testosterone, there were zero. Zero. Nobody died of cardiovascular disease that was on testosterone replacement.
Yeah, that's statistically relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's basically 100% success at preventing cardiovascular death, right? But nobody's going to call it that. So somehow they twisted the statistics around and took some variables, and they declared that testosterone replacement caused a 60 to 90% reduction in cardiovascular mortality. That's insane. And this study got no press. I had to find this through searching in PubMed, and I was pissed that I'd never heard of it. Cholesterol drugs have never been proven to save any lives ever. But everybody knows, you got to be on a cholesterol drug. You got to be on a cholesterol drug because it's going to save your life. There's not a shred of evidence ever that shows that lowering your cholesterol with a statin drug will reduce your risk of cardiovascular death. And yet, every doctor says they should put that crap in the water. The one study of testosterone looking at this showed a massive, huge, unbelievable reduction in cardiovascular death, and nobody talks about it. I mean, what else do you need to know about the strength of big pharma and branding and advertising versus truth and actual and reality and science? Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I don't think there's a downside. As long as you keep your estrogen where it belongs, your DHT where it belongs, your prostate's not going to get too big. You're not going to end up with blood clots. You're not going to end up with cancer. You're not going to end up with any negative outcome whatsoever. You're just going to have a longer, happier, healthier life. And it's key to that happening for you.
I can absolutely vouch for that. I've been in it for years. I have to actually think about how long exactly, but the quality of my life is infinitely better. There's one thing that comes up. It even came up today in the team where it said, well, isn't that for old men? Shouldn't you just, nobody below the age of 60, or maybe 50, should even think about this, and you should never give it to people in their 30s, and it's just, because then you'll never be able to quit it. It's like once you start in it, it's like that limitless thing, and you will never be able to get off that roller coaster.
There's no truth to that. Yeah, the thing is, so I always use type 1 diabetes as a comparison, discussion. I'm also a type 1 diabetic. I also have my hypothyroid. So I stopped making insulin. I have to use insulin injections to survive. Like if I run out of insulin, if the world goes to hell and the pharmacies all shut down, I'll be dead in a few weeks without insulin. It's just the way it is, right? Would you say, well, nobody should need insulin? Well, of course they shouldn't, but when your body stops making it, then you do, right? And it used to be older men is where we started to see the decline in testosterone and the deterioration. Oh, these guys need some support. And like I said early in our discussion, the problem now is that the chemical burden in our world has reached a point for the last couple generations where everyone is poisoned at a level that makes their testicles inefficient at making testosterone. It used to be that young men, age 16 to 25, they had testosterone levels in the 2000s. That was where people were. That's where we were as a species. And now when I test guys in their late teens and 20s, most of them are below 500. Almost all of them are below 500. Many of them are in the 200s or the 300s. And that decade of life, so from age 16 to 25, is when you are supposed to turn from a boy into a man, right? Your physical body is supposed to develop thicker bone structure, thicker musculature. Your brain especially is supposed to develop a tremendous amount in that decade under the influence of testosterone, to have the mental clarity, the decisiveness, the confidence, the motivation, the righteousness, morality, all these things, understanding, feeling comfortable with your own gender, feeling comfortable with your sexuality, chivalry, all these things that used to be part of positive masculinity require testosterone in the brain in adequate amounts for you to program that in. And so, I get that people are just so shocked that I talk about testing 16-year-olds and I'm putting guys on testosterone at 16. They're like, why would you do that? Like, because they need it. And during that decade of life is when they need it more than any other point in their life. Why would you deprive them of it then and wait until they're old and give it to them later, when this is when they have to develop? If you had a child that had a growth hormone deficiency and you got a 12-year-old who's like 3.5 feet tall or 4 feet tall, would you not give them growth hormone and help them grow that extra foot of height so that they kind of fit into society better and didn't feel horrible about themselves for their whole life, right? So they're not a dwarf. Of course you would. You wouldn't wait till they were 20 and give it to them because it's too fucking late. They won't grow at 20. You have to give it to them when they're before their teenage years, before puberty. Testosterone is supposed to be at its highest between 16 and 25. So if you're not going to give it to them then, why? You give me the argument why you would deprive that young man of this ingredient he needs to reach his potential. There's no argument that I can imagine that makes any sense.
No, I completely agree with that, and it's like, yeah, like with the growth hormone. If you wait till there's a window, and if you miss that window, then you can give it 10 times a dose of it. It'll not do the trick. It can't.
Seeing it in young people today, mental health is a huge problem, and in young men, their mental health is heavily influenced by their level of testosterone. If you put these guys that are shy, introverted, fearful, anxious, depressed, you put them on testosterone, they don't have those problems anymore. I can tell you that. They just don't. They go on living their life. They take on life full speed ahead, and they are successful.
And it's 10 years ago, I was walking around Marina del Rey. I was living in my sailboat, and when a girl smiled at me, and I was in my 50s then, I was thinking younger than I'm now or more. Girls smiled at me like, yeah, they're just being polite. It's like, I'm over the hill. It's done. I'll never, ever again. And the funny thing is, it's almost like, okay, this is definitely not scientific, but it's almost like when I'm near women, near enough for them to literally, figuratively smell testosterone, masculinity, pheromones, whatever it may be. I've gotten comments from women that were like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. You smelled so masculine. I said, I showered. I swear I did. I said, no, it's something else. You smell great, but I don't know what it is.
It's the silverback gorilla phenomenon. There's something about testosterone does increase your, not just, the pheromones and whatnot. Humans haven't found a way to measure pheromones yet, but we definitely produce them, and they are hormonally driven. I'm 52. I live in Hawaii. We go to the beach a lot. Everybody's walking around with their shirt off. I get comments from women in their 20s routinely.
Without your shirt, but I've seen you with a shirt on, and you can see you look like like a poster boy for that. So I wanted to say one thing though, because there's some influencers out there, and some of my team members came back to me and said, make a point that, okay, it's not the be all end all for all your masculinity developments. There is no substitute for the inner work, your values, your virtues. And by the way, when most people would say, well, what do you mean virtues? Yeah, I have my values. I want to get rich and famous and get laid. So that's not values. Well, it's values, it's goals, whatever. But so virtues, isn't that for like Blue Noise Church ladies? And I said, no. The word virtue, V-I-R, is Latin for man. So it is literally a masculine quality. Virtues are not like some moralistic kind of Puritan kind of construct. Virtues, you stand for something. It's like, why are women attracted to the firemen, the people that stand for something, that have a vision and a purpose? They want to change something. And they say, well, the firemen is the muscles. So they pose for counters. So that's kind of narcissistic. But that's like Pete Hicks said, kind of doing push-ups with the troops. You shouldn't be doing that. If you're the DefSec, Secretary of Defense, you shouldn't be doing push-up with the troops. You shouldn't be that narcissistic. But I digress. The point is, there's a lot of guys who think that's so. Okay, so all I need to do to be a man is to inject testosterone, get on hormone replacement therapy or whatever it is, and then I don't need any of that inner work. I'll be a man, and I'll be a shining knight in armor, whatever, a knight in shining armor. I don't need that. And in my opinion, if anything, it will help you to maybe get more serious about that. But it's not a substitute. And I just want to say that so people don't understand. Well, instant gratification, all I need to do is I can inject myself with that and I'll be a man. No.
It is necessary. I would say that having adequate testosterone is necessary, but not sufficient, right? Like you said, there are other aspects, of course, like eating right, getting good activity, doing the right things with your time and your life, being a good member of society. But men are not likely to be a good, productive member of society without adequate testosterone. Look at almost every school shooter in America. Just look at the pictures of the school shooters. These are all young men who are skinny and they look like they didn't develop physically or mentally the way that they were supposed to. I would love for somebody to go test, like every school shooter we have in prison in America, go get their blood drawn, see what their average testosterone level is. I bet it's below 300. Guaranteed. These are miserable young men who feel like there's no quality of life whatsoever. So who cares anymore? I'm just going to take it out on children. How manly is it? How masculine is it to go to school and shoot a bunch of children? Right? That's what you get with low testosterone. With high testosterone, you get firemen and police officers and soldiers, right? That's what you get. You get men that are going to be righteous. They're going to do good for other people, not just look out for themselves and not lash out at everybody because they're so miserable inside. So it is something I really think is required. Every man that I have put on testosterone has mentioned that kind of thing to me, that they want to do things now, right? Like they want to exercise, they want to be fit, they want to be with their family, they want to be productive. And without testosterone, you're the opposite. You just don't have the motivation. You're fearful. You're insecure. You're not really going to be good for your family, yourself, or society. Not like you could be.
I can absolutely 100% agree with that. And I've been through those ups and downs over the last few years and earlier times in my life when I was just a little brat kid, army type brat, or intelligence brat, I should say, because it wasn't the army. But I was a little bitch boy that was entitled. I want my ice cream while I scream. I was very good at manipulating women. And my testosterone levels were always way higher than 300 or 400 back then. So I don't want people to think that this is a substitute for some kind of inner work. You will also, mens sana and corpore sano, meaning a healthy mind and a healthy body. The Romans used to say, you need to work on all kinds of levels. You need to be a man who stands for something, the protector, the rightful king, or the protector, Robin Hood, the protector of the widows and orphans, whatever. You stand for something. You need to be a gentleman. A gentleman used to not be a gentleman. A gentleman was a nobility. He was basically a precursor to a knight. He carried a sword. He was defending his lady. He was defending the defenseless, and he was standing for something. And I like to end it on something that I've said many times and I've heard many times. A man who won't stand for something will fall for anything. And he will either fall over or he'll fall for anything. He's easily duped. A man who won't stand for something, we as a country, as a nation, as men, need to learn how to stand for something. That's part of masculinity, of becoming a man, that the rite of passage, the initiation. But I do completely believe at this point, and I'm convinced that testosterone will actually probably by an order of magnitude aid you and propel you in the journey. And all I can say is, guys, there's no point in suffering or having all these, oh, but I shouldn't need that extra tea. It should have, there's a lot of nutrition should have more nutrition in it. Vegetables taste like nothing. Fruit tastes like nothing. It's just the way the world we live in. We're bombarded with all kinds of BS. Most of it is mental and emotional. But guys, do yourself a favor. Don't suffer senselessly. I mean, there's a point in suffer. You don't get any brownie points for suffering. You don't get any stairway to heaven for being in misery. And I shouldn't need this. This is shameful. Yeah, you shouldn't need psychotherapy. You shouldn't need my workshops either. You shouldn't need any of that stuff. But unfortunately, in the real world, we do need these things, and they make a huge difference. Where can people find you, Dr. Vincent? Where can they find you? And that's the best way to get in touch with you.
Our website, our business is Global Immunotherapy. Like I said, one of the biggest things to do is immunological treatment. So it's globalimmunotherapy.com.
Global Immunotherapy.
We have a scheduling program. People want. I have a TRT handout that's available on the website. You can download it and print it, and it basically tells you everything you need to know about getting yourself optimized for this. All the things I talked about, all the details, lab ranges you want to be in, the products you want to use. It's like 8 pages. It tells you everything you need to know. So if you had the resources to acquire your own things and get your own labs done, and you were a real self-motivated, intelligent person, you could do it all by yourself, honestly. If people want to talk to me about their specific case, like maybe they have other health issues, they don't know how it interacts or interplays or how they should go about it, or they just want direct advice about their own situation. Like you said, you got a hold of me, you can schedule through the website. I talk to you for 45 minutes or so, most cases, and figure out where you're at, tell you where to go next, have a couple of points of contact, get labs checked, and have everything optimized. And then hopefully you don't even need me anymore unless something changes with your situation in the future. And that's my goal. Whether, if you have a good practitioner in your area who's willing to listen and learn, give them a copy of my handout. I encourage people to give the copy of this to their doctors. So maybe the right people will see it and be open-minded and go, oh, well, let me see if this works for my patients. And there'll be more practitioners around the world that are doing this well.
There will be. Dr. Vincent Tai, thank you very much for coming on the program here. Thank you very much. Guys, no need to suffer needlessly. Please do this. My life would be so miserable without this. You don't even know. Anyway, that said, thank you so much. And I appreciate everything you said here. And I hope so does our audience. Guys, be a man. And this is how you get there.